in a way. Just quickly, I mean, the thing of saying Muslims, of course, in this, is that in most countries it's a very small minority of people. There is a correct perception, I think, that Islam as a religion is more brittle and feels these things more woundedly than other religions. Islam has not been used to this process historically. It is not used to the idea that your deepest feelings can be trodden upon.
You cannot talk about Islam in these broad, sweeping generalisations.
Well, you talked about Muslims
Islam,
in sorry.
do you mean Muslim majority countries?
No. Islamic said it's the same. And all singing.
Do you want me to name you scholars?
I could ask those.
Very briefly. If I keep insulting you, if I keep offending you, there is a limit to what I call freedom of speech.
Recent years have seen fierce debates over Islam's place in modern society, ignited by provocative content like the film Innocence of Muslims. Today we dive into a heated discussion with Douglas Murray, Ajmal Masroor, Mohammed Ansar and others, exploring the clash between freedom of expression and respect for religious sentiments. Let's jump into this controversial debate and analyse the key arguments presented.
Now, the violent reaction worldwide to the anti-Islam film Innocence of Muslims shows no sign of cooling down. Since the appearance of the low-budget film on the internet and the publication since of caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad in French satirical weekly, scores of people have been killed in violence linked to the film, which has renewed debate over freedom of expression. So should we tolerate the publication of such provocative views, however distasteful and inflammatory, and simply choose to ignore them? Or should we try harder to understand why so many people have taken to the streets in protest? Ajmal Masroor thinks protesting Muslims are overreacting and should rise above the insults. This is his Sunday Stand.
The host sets the stage for the discussion, highlighting the stark contrast between defending free speech and respecting religious beliefs. This is a debate that has divided societies and continues to provoke strong reactions.
Muslims should lighten up and laugh at the stupidity of those who mock the Prophet Muhammad. I've been disgusted by the violent response from Muslims across the globe to a ridiculous trailer made about the Blessed Prophet. The film is pathetic and amateurish, but the Neanderthal and irrational response from the Muslim masses have left me feeling extremely embarrassed. When the Prophet walked the earth, he was constantly mocked, insulted, and called all sorts of terrible names. He never responded to any of those taunts or insults. He did not ask his companions to take action to protect his honor. He simply won their hearts and minds through his gentle character. Killing innocent people, burning properties, and rioting is not acceptable to being a Muslim. This is the hallmark of ignorance and backwardness. But I must also emphasize the non-Muslim society's failure to understand and respect the values that Muslims have. Non-Muslim societies have every right to criticize the Prophet, God, Islam and Muslims. No one should ever take that right away. But you could be critical without the need to ridicule. Respect is a two-way street. I believe that the legacy of the Prophet Muhammad will far outlive all forms of mockery.
Ajmal Masroor presents a call for Muslims to rise above insults and ridicule, advocating for a peaceful and dignified response, in line with the Prophet Muhammad's own example. His stance emphasises the need for restraint and the importance of not resorting to violence.
I want to start with you, Mohammed. Muslims have chosen, in a way, to make a very big deal out of a pretty rubbish film, and it has been an overreaction, hasn't it?
There's no doubt it's a rubbish film, but this isn't film 2012. We're not here to critique the artistic quality of the film. What most people, and people I speak to on Twitter, people I speak to in the street and at meetings, one of the things they're very clear about is that they don't understand the context of the hate, of the pain, of the suffering that Muslims feel in response. Now, Muslims should never go beyond the limits and the boundaries of Islam in terms of peaceful protest and have it using.
Well, they've done it, haven't they?
Well, some have done it, and I think the question we should be asking is some, not all.
Yeah.
Many. I've seen the film. It was not very funny. It was pretty disgusting. It was awful in some places, and We do have a right to freedom of expression in this country. However, even the European Convention on Human Rights, in Article 10.2, sets limits on that freedom of expression, and it needs to be used responsibly, and it needs to be used in a measured sense.
Mohammed Ansar acknowledges the film's poor quality, but argues that the issue isn't about the film itself. He emphasises the deep offence it causes to many Muslims and stresses the need for responsible use of free speech, respecting the boundaries set by the law.
I mean, Douglas Murray, what's interesting is, it said that perhaps in the West we've lost any understanding of the depth of offence that things like this cause to Muslims, and is that a problem of our own making?
I think that's true in a way. Just quickly, I mean, the thing of saying Muslims, of course, in this, is that in most countries it is a very small minority of people. I mean, and also we should bear in mind that a lot of political people are using this for their benefit. In Australia, the riots would seem to be led by, organisations like Hizb ut-Tahrir. In Britain, the very small number of protesters who came out seem to have been affiliated with groups like the now banned Al-Mujah Haroon and so on. So let's not think this is, as it were, Muslims as a bloc taking offence. But there is a correct perception, I think, that Islam as a religion is more brittle and feels these things more woundedly than other religions, and there is a reason for that. I mean, in a couple of weeks' time in London, the musical by the creators of South Park, Mormonism the Musical, will begin. It's been going on Broadway for some years, packed out crowds, including Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State, who said she was so offended by this film on the internet. So one of the things about this is that most religions by now have realised that being satirised, being critiqued, being even ridiculed and criticised, let's face it, just criticised or looked at in a historical manner, as happened a few weeks ago with a film by Tom Holland on Channel 4. Even these things are felt very woundedly, and that's because all other religions, apart from Islam, have been through this period of criticism and have, as it were, come out to some extent, not completely, at the other end. Islam has not been used to this process historically. It is not used to the idea that your deepest feelings can be trodden upon, and that is a right that people who do not share your faith have.
Douglas Murray argues that while the protests are often led by a minority, there's a broader perception that Islam, as a religion, is more sensitive to criticism. He suggests that this sensitivity is partly due to a lack of historical exposure to critique and satire, unlike other religions.
What are you talking about? Because how can Islam, which is a faith, it's a religion, it's an ideology, it's a way of life, you cannot talk about Islam in these broad, sweeping generalisations.
Well, you talked about Muslims
Islam doesn't feel things. Individual Muslims do, people who are mothers.
Yeah, because it is a very important point. There are lots of different strands of Islam, but in every Islamic society, and in the world today, and historically.
Do you mean Muslim majority countries?
No. The Islamic side, it's societies that have Islam within the rule of law, countries like Pakistan, where Islam is a very important part of the constitution and of the governance of the country. These places all put a particular emphasis on the fact that ridiculing of the Prophet Muhammad, or all sorts of claims about him, asking whether he existed and so on, is blasphemy, and that blasphemy should be punished.
Here, Douglas Murray and Mohammed Ansar clash on the topic of generalising Islam. Murray emphasises the legal and cultural emphasis in Islamic societies on protecting the Prophet's honour, while Ansar challenges the broad generalisations made about Islam as a whole.
Ajmal, it is an issue about those countries, isn't it? And it's all very well for you in the West to say, look, you can rise above it. But in Pakistan, in Yemen, in these places where there's been violence, they can't, can they?
I've got simply 3 points to make on this particular discussion. I think there's one correction for Douglas's information. Islam has been through 1400 years of critique, discussions and debates, internally and externally. And it has gone through it without a problem, and it will go through it without any issue. I have no issue with that. I think there is an element of truth in what we are saying here to do with Muslims' disproportionate response. The reasons these responses are particularly prominent in countries like Pakistan, Yemen, and Bangladesh has more to do with politics than religion. Let me give you an example.
Very briefly.
Most of these countries are ruled by dictators and despots, illegitimate governments, corruption is rampant, poverty is acute, no opportunities for people to make a better future for themselves tomorrow. And don't forget, the drones attack that has dominated Yemen and Pakistan has also exasperated frustration. So what we're now seeing is a political response using this as a pretext.
As an excuse.
But Prophet Muhammad, let me put it clearly, Prophet Muhammad doesn't need our defense.
Okay.
And God doesn't need our defense.
All right,
what we need to do is defend ourselves.
Absolutely. The second point you make, I think, is perfectly valid. The first, I think, is not. For this reason. You say that Islam has been through this process for 1400 years. A part of that is true. There has been debate within Islam, but on the fundamentals of Islam, about the nature of Muhammad, about whether or not he existed even, whether the Quran was created by him or was created by God, whether he invented it, these things actually Islamic societies tended to, and Muslims even today, feel very brittle about. The fact is, and all singing...
Do you want me to name you scholars?
Let Douglas just finish, please.
Yes, and I could name them back, and many have suffered for raising these questions when they have. The fact is that we can put it this way: an all-singing, all-dancing Mormon musical is a threat to nobody. Nobody thinks that Mormon mobs are going to go and kill anybody, or threaten to. But there is a risk, and it is a legitimate risk in the world today, that an all-singing, all-dancing Muhammad musical in the West End might not go off so well.
There is a very simple...
Ajmal Masroor highlights the political context in which these reactions occur, pointing to issues like dictatorship, corruption, and external military interventions as factors that exacerbate tensions. Douglas Murray, however, asserts that certain fundamental questions about Islam's tenets remain sensitive topics, often met with a strong response. Here, a question comes to mind that why do Islamic societies react more strongly to religious satire compared to other religions? What I think is, Islamic societies' strong reactions to religious satire stem from a deeply ingrained aversion to critique, fostered by centuries of insulation from external scrutiny. This cultural shield has left them particularly sensitive and unprepared for modern satirical challenges.
Very briefly.
If I keep insulting you, if I keep offending you, there is a limit to what I call freedom of speech. You cannot keep insulting me and offending me. I would turn around and say, Samira, your joke is not funny, please stop it. Eventually you'll stop. Do you know why? Because you'd respect me. You'd be kind and courteous to me. And
but this is about belief and not about individuals. I want to pause it there for a second.
A billion people are simply saying, what is wrong with accepting that we have the right to revere and follow our Prophet the way we do? But you have the right to criticize our religion, no problem. Be critical, but don't ridicule.
Ajmal Masroor refutes the idea that Muslims cannot handle criticism, asserting that Islam has historically faced and survived scrutiny. He argues that the real issue lies in political manipulation by leaders in Muslim-majority countries who exploit religious sentiments for their gain.
And this is the problem.
I want to give Douglas the last word on this.
It comes down to a very fundamental point. Most people in this country are not Muslim, most people in France are not Muslim, and so on. We don't believe that Muhammad, if he existed, heard any angels speaking. It's the opinion of those of us who are not Muslim that he obviously either made it up or something else. Now, we think the same thing about Mormonism. Atheists obviously will believe the same thing about Jesus and about Moses and so on. But nobody has a problem saying, I'll make a film about Moses where he's made up the Ten Commandments. It was done very well by Mel Brooks. But nobody has a problem now watching a film saying that Jesus made it up. But they do have a problem, and we have a problem of censorship and self-censorship, because people are afraid to say that Muhammad made it all up, and the response to that, they know, is that they will stop saying it, they will pretend, and hope they won't get any trouble, because they will pretend that they are sort of believing Islam. They'll say the Prophet Muhammad. They will try not to cause any offence.
All right, well, we'll have to leave it there.
Douglas Murray suggests that every society has its sacred values, and the strong reaction to insults against Islam reflects a need for some Muslim societies to adapt to modern norms of free speech. He emphasises that the global community should uphold the right to express controversial views, even if they are offensive. The debate around freedom of expression and respect for religious beliefs is far from over. As we've seen, figures like Douglas Murray and Ajmal Masroor offer contrasting perspectives on how societies should navigate these sensitive issues. While some advocate for absolute free speech, others call for a more nuanced approach that considers the impact on religious communities. As we continue to grapple with these questions, it's crucial to engage in thoughtful and respectful dialogue, recognizing the diverse viewpoints and experiences that shape our world. If you found this video thought-provoking, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more engaging content. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. How should societies balance free speech with respect for religious beliefs? Let's continue the conversation in comments. Thank you for watching.